I'm lucky to have a purpose that I feel very strongly about and that I want to do something about. So Organon, as I mentioned, is a 3-year-old company, and we're about a $6.5 billion company, growing at about 5% or so every year, and we're a global company, but we came as a spin-out from a much larger company, one of the largest in the world, which is Merck MSD, which is where I spent most of my career. And at the time that we actually were thinking about spinning the company out, we had all these products, about 64 products, nearly 10,000 people across the world. There was no vision of where we were going to invest our capital for research and development in the future. What I saw very clearly is that there's no company today that's focused on a specific gender. And at the same time, I saw so many significant gaps in the treatment of women's health. I'll give you a statistic, for example. It wasn't until the mid-90s that women were actually even included in clinical studies. So the concept of understanding the different biologies between men and women and all the issues that circulated around women's health, and the fact that only 4% of all research dollars that's spent in our industry is targeted towards women's health, we decided that that was a good place to go as a company in terms of research and investing in our research and development efforts to try to find solutions for those conditions unique to women, those conditions that I would say disproportionately affect women, and finally, those conditions that affect women differently. So the way that women's health was traditionally always defined was reproductive health, fertility, contraception. We are kind of looking beyond that to include maternal health, to include conditions that, again, disproportionately impact women, like osteoporosis or migraine or celiac disease or chronic cough. So all of those things have one common thread. There's not enough innovation in that space. So that's essentially what created the focus on women's health for us. I'm actually here on the request of one of our largest regions, which is the emerging market regions, which has Latin America, Middle East Africa, and Asia Pacific, including Japan, included in this group. And they're here having a meeting, and so I thought I'd spend some time with them here, and that's why we're in Cairo, because it's kind of in the center of both of those regions. And each region that I visit is quite different from a number of perspectives around women's health. How much investments are they putting into it? Some regions that are, lower socioeconomic levels are just getting their hands around maternal health and investing in just helping women in the most basic of necessities and needs. And if the more that you move to more developed societies, they start to invest in other things around women's health. There's one common theme, though, throughout the world, whether it's in the lower socioeconomic areas or whether it's in the various highest levels, is that there is now a shift. It's happened socially, but now it's happening through many other areas. Gender equity, pay equity, health equity, a number of other different things that are going on in terms of the voice of women. And now I talk to governments across the world, and the one common theme is they want to do more in the space of women's health. Some countries face an unintended pregnancy issue, which means their society is growing too fast and they need to control it. Other societies, like in, for example, China and Korea, they have the opposite issue. Their populations are declining, so they need to find ways of increasing fertility rates. Those are just on the reproductive area. But if you're talking about things like endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, postpartum bleeding, postpartum depression, a number of those areas, much more needs to be done to invest in that space. Egypt it's just in a nascent part of their curve in terms of really understanding what it is they need. But I would say right now in Egypt, there needs to be, I think the population is very young. It's a very young population. It's a growing population. And I think that the issue is really trying to understand what are your needs? What are the broad base needs in society that need to be addressed? And so I think that's the level of discussion and dialogue that needs to take place. Is Egypt, you just need to have statistics, you need to have the discussions available in order to understand where you need to point your efforts as a government. Well, when you strip it down, the basic value proposition of why Organon should succeed and will hopefully contribute in the future is essentially innovations. What are we bringing to help solve issues? And what are we doing in regards to our investments in the research and development arm that we have to bring new innovations that can address unmet needs in a variety of different areas? Again, unique to women, disproportionately impacting women and such. And that really is about the efforts that we do around the partners that we have to bring in assets or our own initiatives in terms of research and development. So it is an important question, because what is the solution that we're all looking for in the industry of the R&D segment? It's really to do good science. It's really to bring in assets that ultimately will help address these needs that I've spoken about. And so I think right now, the one thing that you can see happening in medical schools across the world is that there are more women in medical schools now today than there are men. In many countries, it can go up to almost 2/3 of the students right now in medical school are women versus 1/3 of men. That is a big change, say 20 years ago, when you looked at it. More women want to get in the space of science, of medical approaches to being physicians or scientific folks. And so I think over time you'll see the natural pool of investigators or scientists or physicians who are scientists start to come into the industry and start to be there. Because when somebody comes out of medical school, they have different paths. They can go be a physician, they can work for the government, they can work for different areas. Some will choose to come and work for the industry, the pharma industry. So that's one aspect that says that the pool of talent is slowly starting to expand in the right way regarding women in the space. Second, there's an area, and it's a segment called Femtech. It's exploding. And these are small, women-led companies that are focused on everything from digital interventions like period trackers or fertility trackers that can be done on the phone or whatever, all the way to devices and everything in between. And those are what I would call small, entrepreneurial, venture capital backed type of initiatives that are coming. Many won't succeed, but some will. And those that succeed will hopefully bring in more research opportunities for women to be there. But I always say this to people who ask me, and I'll kind of skip the question you may or may not have asked or were going to ask me. Sometimes in the beginning when we spun out, I would get the question, how is it that a man is a CEO of a company that is focused on women's health? Why isn't it a woman who's running this company? And I always say something interesting, and that is that it was myself that had actually initiated the thinking of us being focused on women's health. Now, women's health is only about 1/3 of our overall global business, but it takes up about 80% of our research dollars that we're investing in for the future. But B, in order to really make significant progress, this is a team game. Women are not going to solely solve the issues of women. It's going to have to be men and women that ultimately are committed to not only the investigations and the research, but also in government funding and access and all those things. Education is such a critical issue. Is what kind of education is out there for women to understand their bodies and understand what it is that they're dealing with. So I think we're just at the beginning, but I believe that the wave is moving in the right direction as opposed to not. Actually, that story, it's a very good question. It goes back to the days that we started the company. Now, the company we came from is a very old, well-known, large, incredibly successful company. And the history of that company goes back well over 100 years. And the type of talent that came to that company is second to none. The best scientific, the best marketing, the best legal, the best everything. That's the type of employees that were coming to that company. So I thought initially that if you spun out this company, you have to have a fairly strong value proposition to entice 10,000 people to come over with you. And if it wasn't strong, given their level of talent, they could find other options immediately because other companies would take them immediately. So the focus on women's health has had an amazing stickiness in terms of for the cultural aspects of who we are as a company and why we exist. It's kind of the answering the why question. And I think that if you ask anyone in the company, so what is it that you do? What is it that you as a company do? They will all tell you universally that we're really focused on solving the needs of women's health. So it inspires me to see, to your question, those founders that we have, the employees that we have in the company, be so committed, even more than I ever anticipated, towards this journey together. I think because I truly believe in the purpose of what we're trying to do. And I think for anybody I speak to who's interested in a career, younger people, like yesterday I was at AUC talking to young finance students. And we were having a discussion about what does one do when they come out of college? And I basically said to them, whatever you do, I mean, it may sound kind of naive, but it is true. If you have a strong purpose of what you want to do, and you feel strongly about it, and you feel you can make the world a better place, that in itself will be a motivating driver for you to get up and encounter all of the challenges that I never knew existed, but I'm starting to find them out as I go around the world. It's tough to spin out a new company. It's hard to establish a new company. It's harder even to make sure you make the right decisions on what areas you're going to investigate and what are you going to do with the money of the company in terms of investment in R&D. So I think that what strikes me as what keeps me going is two things. One is the connectivity we all have as a company, as the people in the company, and two is the mission. The mission itself gives me purpose. And I think same what I said to those young people yesterday is what I say to myself. Yeah, so our role is to research, manufacture, and market products that we believe has a beneficial impact on society. Government's role, the government of Egypt, their role is to really educate and help their population to live a healthier lives, men, women, children. The difference that you, an advantage that you as a person, as a woman has, that your mother or grandmother didn't have here in Egypt, is the internet, is the access to look for yourself and understanding some of the symptoms that you may be feeling at a given moment in time. That's power. Information in the hands of patients is a powerful thing. And what I can tell you though is so many women today are facing certain conditions like endometriosis, which causes severe pain and disturbance for women. Almost 9% or 10% of all women of reproductive age actually suffer from endometriosis. It's a very horribly painful condition. And now this is data in the US, so I don't know what the data is obviously in Egypt, but they've done research to show that a woman, imagine, would need to see 6 to 7 doctors in order to get the right diagnosis of endometriosis. Many times it's just you're suffering, it's mental, you're suffering from this, you're suffering from that, whatever. And it's quite a frustrating journey to be able to know what it is that you're struggling with. And so I think the key for us is we work with partners, whether it's the UNDP or whether it's other governments or whether it's folks like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Sub-Saharan Africa or NGOs, in order to be able to help them to communicate to patients, women across the world. But ultimately it comes down to the governments. Local governments need to really work on educating their population on the importance of understanding their health in ways that will help them to live a healthier, longer, more productive life. And I think that is the key that governments need to address. Now, certain governments are there, they're focused on it. Many governments are not. And I think that's just going to take some time. But I'd like to say this, that at least there's a voice of one company, which is Organon, who's talking about it. And to you right now, for example. And then that starts to reach other ears. And I'm having a session tomorrow with the American ambassador here and a number of other ministry people that will talk about women's health. So the more that it's being talked about, I think the more that people will realize that we need to do something more. It's just good to be back in Egypt. Egypt is an important country for me personally, because I spent some time here as a university student. I met my wife here, she's Egyptian, and I'm glad to be back. It's been almost 10 years, and it's amazing to see all of the development that's taking place, all the things that are happening here. It gives me a lot of encouragement and enthusiasm that this young country that has, in terms of the population, very old country in terms of history, but very young country in terms of its population, has tremendous opportunities ahead of it for the region and for the world, hopefully one day. And this is a complex region. The Middle East region has complexities that are hard to solve for. But the one thing is constant is, if you have a young population that are entrepreneurial, that are creative, that are passionate, then you have a chance to really succeed in the world, as I see it at least.